When Stranger Things returns, it will introduce a new threat, not a monster, a human. Her name is Dr. K, and she's about to become the most terrifying villain the show has ever had. Season 5 begins after Hawkins is fallen. The town is sealed off, fenced, and silent. A quarantine zone under full government control. What used to be a home is now a lab with walls, and Dr. K is the one running it. She doesn't hide in the shadows like Vecna or experiment in secret like Brenner. That's what makes her evil. Brenner believed he could control power. Kay believes she can control people, and that difference makes her far more dangerous. When she declares Hawkins a quarantine zone, it isn't a suggestion, it's policy. She doesn't need to argue or explain. The soldiers don't question her because the chain of command doesn't allow it. And that's the story Stranger Things has been building towards since season 1. The danger of systems that outlive their creators. Every time the government has tried to contain the supernatural, it's made it stronger. They tried to close the gate, another opened. They tried to isolate Eleven, she became unstoppable. Now they've locked down an entire town, and the energy beneath Hawkins has never been more unstable. Kay thinks she's managing the crisis. In reality, she's feeding it. That's the paradox the Duffers always write around. The need for control is the source of chaos. The moment someone tries to seal Hawkins off, the Upside Down finds a way through. It's not just a portal problem, it's a human one. Because the more you fear losing power, the more destructive you become trying to keep it. Kay embodies that perfectly. She believes she's maintaining order, but the show will likely reveal she's the one accelerating the collapse. The quarantine isn't protecting Hawkins, it's suffocating it. And that tension between order and ruin is exactly what this final season is built on. Kay stands at the center of an illusion. She doesn't see the monsters as living things, she sees them as anomalies, problems to neutralize, not understand, and that's how she'll cross the line from authority to villainy. Not because she hates the people of Hawkins, but because she sees them as numbers on a spreadsheet. Evacuation zones, civilian variables, collateral tolerance rates. It's the purest form of human evil Stranger Things has ever explored. Evil that comes not from desire, but from duty. When the story reaches its breaking point, Hawkins will be torn between two worlds. The one trying to consume it and the one trying to control it. The kids, as always, will stand in between. But this time, the system itself is the enemy. Dr. K doesn't fight with tentacles or telekinesis. She fights with authority. She believes she can bend the world back into order. And like every villain in this series, that belief will destroy her. By the end of season 5, Hawkins may survive. But the world it returns to will never be the same. Because once you see the system for what it really is, you can't go back to pretending it keeps you safe. Stranger Things has always used its villains as mirrors. Every creature, every antagonist reflects a part of humanity back at itself. The Mind Flayer showed what happens when connection becomes domination. Vecna showed what happens when pain becomes ideology. And now Dr. K shows what happens when control becomes morality. At first glance, she and Vecna couldn't be more different. One is human, standing behind walls and armed forces. The other is something ancient, twisted, and beyond the laws of nature. But beneath that difference is the same conviction. The belief that the world is broken and that they alone can fix it. That's the shared heartbeat of their evil. Vecna takes lives apart to bring order to the chaos of memory.
It is over, Eleven.
He kills not for pleasure, but for purpose. He believes pain clarifies truth. Kate, on the other hand, doesn't think in terms of emotion at all. Her version of order is mathematical. If closing Hawkins means 1,000 people vanish from the map, then that's the price of stability. She doesn't feel cruelty, she calculates it. That's what connects them. Both villains justify horror by redefining it as necessity. For Vecna, the necessity is cleansing. For Kay, it's containment. Both see chaos as a disease and themselves as the cure. The only difference is what they call the cure. Their methods even mirror each other visually. Vecna spreads vines that wrap around the earth, cutting off movement and air.
You have already lost.
Kay surrounds Hawkins with wire, checkpoints, and silence. One is organic, one metallic, but the goal is identical. Isolation, it's a haunting symmetry. In the Upside Down, nature itself becomes a weapon. In Hawkins, bureaucracy does. Both feed off fear. Both grow stronger when people obey. This parallel isn't accidental. Stranger Things has always blurred the line between supernatural corruption and human failure. The gate isn't just a rift in reality, it's a wound left by control. Hawkins' lab didn't open it through accident. They opened it because someone, somewhere, said it was worth the risk. Every tragedy since then has been a domino falling from that single act of arrogance. Dr. K stands at the end of that chain, the final inheritor of a philosophy built on containment. She doesn't summon monsters, but she doesn't have to. Her monsters wear badges and follow orders, and that's what makes their eventual collision so compelling. Vecna's world is chaos shaped into order. K's is order decaying into chaos. They're opposites collapsing into each other. Imagine this. The moment the fences rise higher, the rift pulses harder. Every time the government strengthens its hold, the Upside Down pushes back. The show's imagery almost guarantees it, the two forms of control feeding on each other until one consumes both. Vecna wants to merge worlds. K wants to separate them. In trying to do opposite things, they achieve the same outcome: total destruction. That's what the story of Stranger Things has always warned against: the illusion of control. The idea that enough authority, enough power, or enough fear can fix what's broken. It never does. It only deepens the wound. In the early seasons, the kids fought monsters with slingshots and loyalty. They won because they refused to obey the rules of control. 11 escaped the lab. Hopper defied the chain of command. Joyce refused to let bureaucracy explain her son's disappearance. Every victory in this series has come from disobedience. Every loss has come from order. Dr. Pautsi K represents the final test of that truth. She's not possessed or corrupted or misled. She's fully convinced she's right. That makes her the kind of villain Stranger Things hasn't faced yet. A villain whose power is legitimacy. Vecna's power collapses under light and truth. But K's power is truth, the official kind. The kind printed on reports and read aloud at press briefings. She doesn't need to convince anyone, she's already authorized. That's how evil evolves in the Stranger Things universe. It doesn't disappear when you kill the monster, it comes back wearing a badge. K's tragedy is that she doesn't see herself as evil. In her mind, she's saving what's left. Every order she gives is one more act of preservation. Every boundary she enforces is one more attempt to contain collapse. The irony, of course, is that she's enforcing the same system that caused the collapse in the first place. By the end, it won't matter whether the final battle happens in the streets of Hawkins or the tunnels below. The real war is between freedom and control, compassion and procedure, life and order. And for the first time in the series, those forces don't come from separate worlds. They're both human, and that's what makes them terrifying. Every season of Stranger Things has ended with a confrontation between two worlds, the one we can see and the one we can't.
An explorer of a realm unspoiled by mankind.
Season 5 turns that pattern inward. The fight isn't between light and darkness anymore. It's between humanity and what it becomes when fear takes control. Dr. K stands at the center of that idea. She isn't a creature of the Upside Down. She's the product of the world that created it. Everything about her, her posture, her uniform, her clipped speech, shows a person who believes that structure can stop chaos. She looks at Hawkins and sees a place that disobeyed the rules. She intends to restore them. But rules don't heal people. They only restrict them. The characters we've followed for years, 11, Mike, Dustin, Lucas, Max, Will, they've survived precisely because they broke every rule placed in front of them. They escaped labs, lied to authorities, ignored orders. They found truth through disobedience, and that's what makes K their perfect opposite. She represents the one thing that could finally stop them. Not strength, not knowledge, but obedience. It's likely that Season 5 will place K between the heroes and whatever remains of the Upside Down. Her goal won't be destruction, it'll be management. She'll see 11 as a hazard to neutralize, not a person to save. To her, closing the rift is an engineering problem. To the heroes, it's a moral one. That difference is where the story's emotional weight will live. Imagine the confrontation. 11 begging to be trusted again, saying she can end this once and for all, while K refuses, claiming that containment is non-negotiable. No hatred, no anger, just a woman who believes procedure is safer than faith. That's the scariest kind of villain.
I don't know.
One who doesn't hate you, but still won't let you live. The Duffers have built Stranger Things around empathy. Every monster has a metaphor, every death a cost. What makes Dr. K powerful isn't that she defies empathy, it's that she rationalizes it away. She doesn't want to hurt anyone, she just wants to finish the mission. But in a story like this, the mission always costs more than it saves. If Vecna represents the corruption of the soul, K represents the corruption of the system. One devours people through emotion, the other erases them through paperwork. Both are forms of annihilation. The visual contrast will likely make that clear. Vecna's world is red, wet, organic. K's is gray, clean, metallic. Together they show what happens when humanity loses balance, when feeling and order both go too far. The result isn't peace, it's paralysis. The irony is that Dr. K probably believes she's doing what Brenner never could, protecting 11 from herself. But where Brenner manipulated with words of affection, K manipulates with authority. She doesn't need to convince 11 that she's loved. She just needs to convince everyone else that Eleven's dangerous. That's how control spreads, not through belief, but through consensus. The kids won't just be fighting monsters this time, they'll be fighting perception, a government narrative that paints them as part of the threat. And that sets up the show's most human finale yet, a story where the battle for Hawkins is also a battle for the truth about what really happened there. Hopper and Joyce, who've spent years fighting institutions, will recognize it first. They've seen what control looks like up close. Hopper knows what it's like to be silenced by bureaucracy. Joyce knows what it's like to be dismissed by it. Their fight against Kay won't just be tactical, it'll be personal, because in her voice, they'll hear the same system that ignored them when their children were taken, and that
She misses her dad. We all do.
That's where Stranger Things finds its emotional ground again. Beneath all the supernatural noise, this has always been a story about people learning to trust their instincts over authority, about small communities protecting each other when the institutions meant to protect them fall apart. Kay's downfall will probably come from that same theme: human connection. The one thing she can't quantify, control, or contain. No command structure can override the bond between these characters, and no quarantine can stop love from breaking through a fence. That's what the final war in Stranger Things really is. Not just a clash between two dimensions, but between two visions of humanity. One built on fear and control, the other built on choice and compassion. And when those collide, the outcome will define what kind of world Hawkins becomes when the dust clears. Vecna wants to reshape reality. Kay wants to seal it. Both will fail for the same reason the people of Hawkins refuse to be managed. That refusal has been the heartbeat of this series since day one. Every victory these characters earned came from acting outside the system, and every loss came from trusting it. The finale will make that explicit. Dr. K is the system. The gates are open, the line between them is gone. In the end, Stranger Things won't just close its story about monsters, it'll close its story about people, about how the most dangerous evil isn't what grows in the dark, it's what grows in the light of power, when someone like Dr. K decides they know what's best for everyone else. Every villain in Stranger Things falls the same way. Not through strength, but through truth. Once the characters see the real shape of their enemy, that enemy loses power. The same pattern will likely end Dr. K's story. Her downfall won't come from a monster, it'll come from realization. From the start, Dr. K believes she's protecting the world. She thinks control is safety, she thinks rules save lives. But Stranger Things has always shown the opposite. Every time someone tries to control what they don't understand, the result is disaster. Hawkins' lab tried, the military tried, even Brenner tried. All of them failed because they saw power as something they could manage. Dr. K will make the same mistake, but on a much bigger scale. The quarantine around Hawkins is her creation, her experiment. She thinks she's building a wall between danger and the rest of the world. What she's really doing is trapping it. The Upside Down doesn't need doors or gates, it needs tension, fear, silence, pressure, the things K brings in abundance. So when the final collapse begins, when Hawkins starts to tear apart under the strain, it won't just be the work of Vecna. It'll be the consequence of K's control. Every camera, every fence, every order she gave will come back to haunt her. That's how Stranger Things closes its circles. The people who try to protect by controlling always become part of the destruction they fear. The great irony of Stranger Things is that the monsters never win because of their strength. They win because people make them possible. Every villain's greatest weapon has been human cooperation. Dr. K depends on that more than anyone. Her commands only work because others believe in them. The second they stop believing, she loses everything. That's the difference between fear and faith. Fear builds walls, faith breaks them. When Hawkins finally fights back, when the town itself becomes a resistance, K's structure will crumble. The soldiers will realize they're not saving the world, they're imprisoning it, and just like that, control gives way to chaos again. But this time, chaos is freedom. The series has always given its villains one last moment of clarity. Brenner had it when he realized he couldn't control Eleven. Billy had it when he saw the truth behind his rage. Kay's version of that moment could be quiet. Maybe she'll understand that control was never the answer, it was the problem. That's how Stranger Things redeems even its darkest stories. It doesn't excuse what people do, but it reminds us that evil in this world often starts with good intentions twisted by fear. Dr. K's final scene could reflect that, not as a villain's death, but as a system's collapse. The face of the institution finally realizing it became the very monster it was built to stop. And in that realization, maybe she finds something Brenner never did until the end: regret. Because Stranger Things isn't just about defeating evil, it's about understanding understanding where it comes from, and where it always originates from humanity. Every story in Stranger Things begins with an experiment, but this time it ends with one. Dr. K's world will be built on tests, on control, data, risk. Everything she might do could come from that logic. If you can measure it, you can manage it. If you can manage it, you can survive it. That's how she approached the Upside Down, as if it were a disease that could be studied into extinction. But Stranger Things has never been a science story. It's an emotion story. It's about what happens when people try to study something they should have simply faced. And that's where K's story closes. When the season reaches its final stretch, the chaos won't come from the monsters. It'll come from people reacting to the unknown again. The soldiers, the civilians, the scientists, all looking for someone to follow. For years, that someone was Brenner. Now it's K. And just like before, she'll tell them to trust her plan, to wait, to obey, to not act until it's safe. But safety, in Hawkins, is just another word for control. That's what the final battle will tear apart. Not just the barrier between worlds, but the system that made those worlds collide in the first place. Because the Upside Down isn't just a physical place, it's a reflection of the human world at its most rigid and repressed. K's command structure, her fences, her containment teams, they're mirrors of that darkness. She doesn't just fight the monster, she recreates it one rule at a time. And in the end, she could face that truth. Not through a fight, but through a realization. That's when she could understand the things she's been blind to the whole time. You can't contain people who've already been broken open by the truth. The story will circle back to the kids, to Eleven, Mike, Will, the ones who've always carried the emotional weight of this world. They're the counter-experiment. The proof that connection beats control. The system that tried to divide them by fear, distance, even death never worked. Every time someone tried to break them apart, they found each other again. That's how the series has always fought back. Not with strength, but with unity. When people talk about the show years from now, they won't just remember the monsters or the portals or the battles. They'll remember what those things stood for. They'll remember the faces of the people who thought they could fix it all and the ones who realized they couldn't. They'll remember that Hawkins was never about one town. It was about the cost of curiosity and the price of control. Dr. K will go down as the face of that cost, not as the devil in the story, but as its mirror. She's what happens when good intentions meet power. She's the last breath of a dying system that thought it could hold the world together by force, and her fall will be the moment Stranger Things finally steps past the question it's been asking since season 1. How far will people go to feel safe? When the answer finally comes, it won't be a scream, it'll be a whisper, a quiet recognition that safety was never the goal. It was freedom all along, and that's where the story could end. Not with the fall of a monster, but with the release of everything that made the monsters possible. The lights go out, the static fades, the world breathes, and for the first time in a long time, it feels alive again. In the end, her story could close the loop that started with Brenner. From lab experiments to military control, Stranger Things has always shown what happens when fear turns into structure. K is the final product of that pattern, the human embodiment of everything Hawkins became. When she falls, it won't just mark the end of the Upside Down. It'll mark the end of the idea that people can control what they don't understand. Hawkins will finally be free, not because the monsters are gone, but because the cycle is broken. That's why Dr. K will be remembered as one of the show's most dangerous villains. Not because of what she destroys, but because she proves that the greatest threat to humanity has always been humanity itself.